As Ryan introduced me, my name is Casey Inoue. I work for Houston Radar, and I appreciate very much the opportunity to participate in this version of Coffee with Coral. And thank you everyone who's been able to join us. And I hope that this is a helpful and educational presentation. And hopefully we have some time at the end for questions and answers or comments. I'll be glad to interface with you guys and address any sorts of ideas or questions that I can. So I'd like to introduce first a little bit about Houston Radar. If anyone here is not familiar with who we are one of the largest OEM radar suppliers in the traffic market. And we've been a growing supplier of what we call our retail products. So I'll talk a little bit about the differentiation between OEM and retail products. But we've been in business now for 15 years, started in, if you can believe it or not, Houston, Texas. And all of our design and manufacturing is done in Texas. And so even though a lot of times those Texans think that they are their own separate country, that is made in the USA. We have customers across the world. Matter of fact, a good percentage of our business is done overseas. We have customers currently in about 56 different countries. Our OEM product line are devices that you can already find as components in other products that Coral Sales offers, such as those made by Vermac and Fortel and JSF. So some of their detection and radar products will already use a good number of our OEM products. We're really known as being high quality, low power radar producers, and that is something that we've carried over into the radar side of the business. The product we're going to be talking about today is our SpeedLane Pro radar, but we do have a couple of other products in this product line, the Armadillo Tracker and the Armadillo Crossfire. Both of those are products I'd be glad to speak further about it at some other point in time if there are questions or concerns. Those are devices that Coral Sales does carry for us as well. So the SpeedLane Pro is a pretty new product. It was introduced at the Intertraffic trade show and convention in 2016, where it was a winner of the best product in the traffic management category. You see here, this is a picture of our co-owners, Sergey Sharonov and Vipin Malik, with the award that the SpeedLane Pro won at this trade show. It is a device that hit the market here in the US in 2017. So this was really its unveiling at the Intertraffic show a few years ago. The SpeedLane Pro, in short, is a traffic counter and classifier radar. It detects up to 16 lanes of traffic, which is the maximum number of lanes you'll find in the US. It covers up to 255 feet across the detection zone. It's a non-intrusive detection device, which means that it is not installed in the roadway. It is roadside. It is also a free flow application. So in a municipal setting, that would be more of a mid-block deployment or for use on free flow applications such as interstates or US highways. We do offer integration with our cloud software, which we call Tetrion Cloud Server. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And it is known for its rapid deployment and setup and its ability to provide live counts, speeds, classification information, and lane occupancy information, which are all features that you can't ordinarily find in the side fire radar business. So a real quick primer, and I do mean real quick because the last thing I would like to do as the sales guy is get bogged down on some technical stuff that I probably can't answer if there's any questions that pop up. The SpeedLane is a side fire radar using FMCW technology. That's frequency modulated continuous wave. That's just a different way of propagating the radar waves that are used for detection. And what that means is this is a non-licensed device, so it operates in the bandwidth for which no licenses are required. It is approved by the FCC for the band with which these devices are used, which is 24 to 24.25 gigahertz. In most countries, it's a little bit different in the UK and Russia and Korea, but for the most part, that's the band used throughout the world. The SpeedLane's performance results, they're not really subject to weather conditions, which is a feature of FMCW radars. They use a shorter wavelength, which means that their wave propagation is not easily blocked by weather conditions like rain or fog or dust, which really separates it from some of the previous iterations of side-fire radar. Performance is going to be the same in day or night conditions and anywhere within the rated temperature range. So it doesn't matter if it's wet pavement or gravel, dirt, snow, ice, none of those adversely affect this technology. Side-fire radar operation is really designed to operate like two virtual loops in each lane here, as sort of demonstrated in this picture. I'm not going to get into the algorithms of the time and how the speed is calculated, except to say that with two virtual loops, a dual beam radar, which there's a radar beam on each end of this device that's putting out these virtual loops, that allows for a more accurate measurement of the speed of a vehicle instead of having to guess what the speed would be based on one reading. You get readings through two loops. The size classification is also much more accurate as it goes through a larger detection zone than previous iterations of side-fire radar. And that also helps increase the accuracy for lane occupancy. So all of the data sets that one might need a side-fire radar for is increased with the design of these two virtual loops as the vehicle travels through the detection zone. I just realized that I had this in my PowerPoint, so I just wanted to make the car go across there. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't have done that one. That one went backwards here. But I thought that was a nice feature. I'd had this in my presentation for a while and didn't realize that it was doing that. So thank you for bearing with me. That's my attempt at an animation. So as a side-fire device, yes.
I just want to ask a quick question on that. I was just thinking,
sir.
So the other side-fire radar products that I've seen are kind of like square. They're not very long. So having the radars in that tube kind of separated that far, does that help the accuracy?
It does, because what happens is the detection zone is increased, and I'll talk about this a little bit more shortly, but that's a good question. As you can see, the SpeedLane is sort of an oblong device, shaped sort of like an oval, and it's cylindrical in shape. And so by having a radar position at each end of that device, when each beam is being put out into the detection zone, the coverage area is going to be larger than what you might find in some competing devices. So if you take one of the leading competing devices in the market nowadays, our detection zone is, I believe, about 30% larger, which means that it just has more room from which to collect data, more points of data in which to assemble an output of the size classification, for example, or even the speed. It's a more accurate representation of speed. Again, instead of having to take one measurement and then guess from that their direction and what that one measurement of speed is, what their speed might be throughout the detection zone.
Awesome.
So there's more opportunities to read the data or to create the data. That's a good question. So as a side-fire device, the SpeedLane Pro mounts on the side of the road. It is normally installed in such a manner that the setback from the first lane and the height of the deployment are going to be approximately equal. That's not really represented well in this picture. This is not really to scale. I did include some recommendations for installation offset and height. These are really just rules of thumb, though. We do include with every device a 15-minute installation video. It's also available on YouTube. But every SpeedLane will come with some rules of thumb for how to install these devices. The important thing is to capture all the lanes desired at a functioning angle. What that means is that it's high enough to shoot over commercial trucks in this first lane. So let's call that lane 1. If you had an 18-wheeler with a big trailer behind it, you want to be able to shoot over that to cover the other lanes. But you also want to make sure that you get the sides of the vehicles as much as possible. So a side-fire device works best when it's able to hit the side of the vehicles that it's detecting, as opposed to just the roof, or a front-fire device, much smaller profile of the grill of a car. So these, again, this is more for the conceptual understanding of how this device mounts and where you would put it. And these tables here will give you more an exact idea about what we normally shoot for. But each location can present its own challenges and requirements. So when we talk about the SpeedLane Pro as a side fire device and kind of a next generation detection device, we're really talking about it as a complete solution. And that's because it is a non-intrusive radar, meaning that you don't have to do any road destruction or construction in order to install this. It mounts on the side of the road. It uses very little power. By being on the side of the road, it's going to keep your work crews safer by not impacting traffic flow. The types of data that you get from it are extremely varied compared with what has been available traditionally. Again, it has the ability to feed live speeds and counts and classification information. This device is also highly integrated with the battery, cell modem, GPS, video camera, DVR, Bluetooth, Ethernet, and PoE all included inside this one enclosure. Oftentimes, the only external accessory that might be included with the SpeedLane Pro would be a solar panel, which we also provide as a fully integrated component, that you can buy from Coral Cells. Different solar panel options depending on the type of solarity that your area experiences. Also, we are the only ones to offer a fully integrated cloud server software. The Tetrion cloud server was basically designed for communication with the SpeedLane Pro. So it collects live data from as many devices as you register with the software. It can provide live snapshot status for you to check out the alignment or traffic conditions. You get also historical summary reports. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But when we talk about complete solution, again, I just like to make sure that people understand what we're really talking about: the benefits of a non-intrusive device, the unparalleled accuracy from non-intrusive radars, the high integration of its design, and then its integration of really various software options. So we really call the SpeedLane Pro a third generation side fire radar. And just to give you an idea about where that comes from, the first generation that we consider, and I think most people would agree with, was the first side fire radars that entered the market. It was a non-intrusive solution, which was great because it increased the safety of work crews, but it used a lot of power. And they were unreliable in weather, and they also could be fairly inaccurate, especially compared with the technology that they were supposedly competing with, the intrusive technology. A lot of times they really only used a single radar beam, and the type of technology that were propagating the waves were such that they would be subject to inaccuracies in certain types of weather. So the second generation of side fire radar that entered the market close to 15 years ago now, they did a lot to improve upon the first generation. They added a second beam, which increased the reliability for accuracy across all data sets. And as the FMCW technology improved, it also got more reliable in weather. So the first generation really cracked the nut of being a non-intrusive solution, something that could be roadside. The second generation built upon that to begin making it more competitive with intrusive devices. And then the SpeedLane Pro has really taken those to the next level so that you get the top-notch performance. It's an ultra-low power device, ultra-high integration for ease of install, and the ease of deployment and setup and configuration for these devices makes it an extremely viable alternative to intrusive devices. So it has really taken that last step that was needed to make a non-intrusive solution on par performance-wise with most of the intrusive detection that you would find, and while still increasing the efficiency of its power usage and of the deployment process. So when I talk about performance, this is one of the screens that I was first introduced to when I was considering working for Houston Radar. And when I saw this screen, I did not really understand what they were showing me at first. I was like, okay, so you're showing me a performance comparison with in-pavement loops. And I can see here that all I really see are the in-pavement loops measurement on this graph. And then I learned that if you zoom in far enough, and depending on what kind of screen you guys are looking at, you may not even be able to see this. At the very tip of these peaks and at the very valley, you will see a little bit of the blue, and the blue is what represents the speed lane. So except for those extreme conditions of the peaks or valleys, the SpeedLane Pro matches the performance of in-pavement loops. This is courtesy of the Nova Scotia Traffic Department in Canada, Eastern Canada, Southeast Canada. So this was a ground truth study they performed to provide this data. And again, I decided to leave this in when I started doing these types of presentations for exactly the same sort of shock value it had for me, which is to demonstrate how accurate the SpeedLane Pro is compared with proven and accepted technology such as the in-pavement loops that have sort of been the gold standard for data, for traffic data in years gone past. Some other testing that we have done has been performed fairly recently in Texas. The Texas DOT commissioned a side-by-side and ground truth testing study with the SpeedLane Pro and a leading product in the market. The test was conducted by TTI, the Texas Transportation Institute. So it's one of the more renowned labs in the traffic industry. This was performed just outside of Houston on an 8-lane major highway. And the ground truth was done for 2 hours. And the way that the DOT decided to use the ground truth was they wanted the time frame with the highest mix of speed variation. What that means is they wanted some bad traffic conditions going from free flow to not as free flow. So they chose a morning rush hour. So if you guys can take a look here at a similar graph to what we were just looking at, this is the TTI report for total volumes. So you can see that the SpeedLane tracks very well with the ground truth study that was conducted. So it is again proving that this device is as accurate as the ground truth will provide. So it tracks very similarly here across the study of the ground truth, which was about 2 hours. The size classification did very well also, and this was actually one of the more telling data sets to come out of this ground truth study was how accurate our classification was, especially when compared with a leading product. So this is another indication of medium-sized vehicles in the green, and for the SpeedLane, and the purple shows the ground truth for medium-sized vehicles. So the DOT in Texas uses 3 size classifications: small, medium, and large. This was the data that was provided to us for the medium and small types here.
I have a question. This is Tobin.
Yes.
Can you go back a slide real quick?
Absolutely.
I'm curious about if you have any insight into why there was an overcount for the SpeedLane Pro. I would have expected it to be an undercount. I'm looking at the 4/4/2016 643 line about there.
Right about here. Right here. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. And the short answer is probably has to do with the traffic conditions. So as traffic was beginning to slow and start their stop and go, again, this is a free flow application. And so once vehicles are stopped, the accuracy does take a hit. It's not really designed to record very low speed traffic. So we warranty the accuracy down to about 6 miles an hour. And so once it gets below there, you're going to see some suffrages in the accuracy claims. This is a result probably of radar the waves starting to reflect differently as you have more objects that aren't clearing the detection zone. And
I see.
there are just more objects for it to bounce off of. There also could be results from more occlusion. So occlusion would block the numbers and generally lead to a lower number. But depending on the types of vehicles that are coming by, again, if they're just parked in the detection zone, the waves might ricochet around a little bit to make basically ghost targets.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for clarifying.
Absolutely, that's a good question. And again, feel free to interrupt at any time. I'd be happy to speak about any of that. So this is the summary from the report, and Coral has a copy of this report. I'd also be glad to share it if anyone would like to see it. At the very end of it, TTI was really only interested in giving TxDOT what they had specifically asked for, such as does this meet our requirements for the state specification? And the short answer turns out to be that the SpeedLane does, in fact. And matter of fact, it's the only device they've tested that does meet their specification requirements. It turns out that the other device that they had concerns about, they had concerns for a very good reason. Tobin, one of the questions you asked about the volume, the undercount. Overall, the volume for the SpeedLane was within 2% of ground truth in the closest direction and 3% in the farthest direction. So overall, we're just saying 2 to 3% of ground truth in both directions. The device that it was compared with, that the DOT, had their concerns about, was off by 11% in the closest direction and 35% in the farthest direction. So our worst direction at 3% compares very favorably with the other device's best direction of 11%, and then extremely favorably when you look at their farthest direction. Typically, what the market has come to expect is that the farther away lanes are, the less accurate radar devices will be. And what the SpeedLane has proven is you don't have to believe that anymore. Accuracy should be accurate throughout the detection zone that anyone claims to cover. Another ground truth study that testifies to the SpeedLane Pro's accuracy was conducted by the city of Winnipeg. Now, this is a very small study. I do want to make sure that people understand this. This was only a 10-minute ground truth study that the city of Winnipeg conducted, and there was only 351 vehicles in this study. So, different conditions might yield different types of results, but the city themselves were very pleased with what they found. And so what they discovered is that for the size classification, data they were getting from the SpeedLane Pro, we advertise a margin of error of 1.7 meters or 5 feet. And the average variance between the ground truth and the data that we were providing in this case was less than half a meter, less than 20 inches. So there were 351 vehicles. 340 of those vehicles were within that typical margin of error, which means there were only 11 vehicles that were outside of that margin of error. And 40 of those 340 were equal from the SpeedLane Pro to the ground truth study. This was, again, a study that was conducted on a fairly low volume road. It was done in clear daylight. The install was certified as being conducted properly. The deployment was correct. So, as many qualifications as one might want to put on any studies that are this small, I'll be happy to put these on there. But the results were positive enough that the city is going to explore further verification at other locations, meaning that they're more willing to trust the SpeedLane now that they have conducted their own study to prove that the size classification is as accurate as they might hope for. So one of the benefits of using the SpeedLane Pro that I haven't really touched on in either of those case studies is our low power performance. And this information is pulled straight from some of the other products marketing material that exists out there. So the SpeedLane Pro uses at baseline 0.9 watts. The RTMS sensor uses 3.6 watts at baseline. So our worst case scenario when we are streaming video over cellular, which is as much power as one can draw, still less than what they use at baseline at 3.3 watts. The Wavetronic Smart Sensor HD, which is kind of the leading product in the market right now, they advertise as consuming less than 8.5 watts of power. But then when you add in some of the components they require from their Click line of products for either Ethernet compatibility or power over Ethernet, Bluetooth, they don't offer an integrated modem or an integrated video camera, their power will very quickly jump up past that. So we don't even have a measurement of what worst case scenario may be there. But again, at our worst case is about 2.5 times less than their baseline. So for those agencies for whom power consumption is a concern, you will not find something that uses less power than the SpeedLane Pro, in addition to the accuracy that is unmatched throughout the industry. To give you an idea about what is powering the SpeedLane Pro and what it looks like and how we fit all of that into such a small enclosure, we like to provide this cutaway. So this is an actual SpeedLane Pro that uses a clear enclosure. So if you see us at trade shows, if we ever have those again, you'll probably see something like this on our table in our booth. As to Ryan's question earlier about the spacing of the radars, that's demonstrated here. So one radar is at the very end of the enclosure and the second radar is at the other end of it. So these are actually the radar heads, and in between there is all the guts of the device. So our HD video camera, which is included as standard, the Bluetooth module, which is included as standard. Then you also have an MPPT solar charge controller, which increases the solar efficiency by up to about 30%. That's included as standard. And then you also have options that fit in here, such as the cell modem with GPS, Ethernet and or PoE device, an optional CPU, or I'm sorry, optional DVR that mounts on the CPU. We offer 9 and 18-hour DVR options. Surge protection for the batteries if you have our optional battery pack. We use a lithium iron phosphate battery pack that provides extremely fast recharge rates. And if used as a standalone option instead of with a solar panel, the battery will provide a 4-day UPS, uninterruptible power supply. So no other device in the market will provide a UPS anywhere close to that, and not even approaching a single day. And we're going to give you 4 days of runtime if you need it. And again, you would also use the batteries in a solar application. Some of the external accessories. So if there's anything that doesn't fit inside of the enclosure, which there are only a couple of things really. On one end of the SpeedLane Pro, this is the outside of the end cap. You'll see an M12 connector. We provide that M12 connector for communications and power. So if you were to use our integrated SpeedLane Pro cable, there's the right angle M12 connector that attaches to the outside here. That's a mil-spec M12 connector. It terminates into 3 different whips: RJ45 Ethernet for power and communications, DB9 serial for communications, and there's also a DC barrel plug for power. So if you use this is our most common external accessory, is the Pro cable. So if you have either an external modem that you want to use, for example, or tie it into an existing power source at a location, then the Pro cable is probably a good fit for you. You can also just use this Pro cable in conjunction, excuse me, with our solar panel accessory. So we offer a couple of different solar panel sizes. That would also be used with our internal battery option, which if you look on this other end of the SpeedLane device, there's your battery disconnect. And if you use the battery option, we also provide an AC charger with a DC converter on it that you can plug in here to just charge the batteries. So if you do have the need of an external cabinet, which you rarely do unless you're doing a drop-in replacement, then we do offer a field interface box here. And this field interface box would provide connections or relays for Ethernet or power, or it's surge protection that's included inside there as well. So the field interface box is generally offered to accommodate existing infrastructure. Again, normally when using the SpeedLane Pro as a new, fresh install, you really wouldn't need it because just about everything that you might need to tie into would be included either inside the enclosure or through this Pro cable. But we do offer it for those applications for which that might be necessary. Most of the applications in the contiguous US would be able to be powered by our 30-watt solar panel, again, because this is such a low power usage device and the batteries recharge so quickly. Up there where you guys are in the great Northwest, the 60-watt solar panel may be more commonly used for year-round autonomy. I do have a solar panel calculator. I'd be glad to run the numbers at any time if you guys are interested to figure out what size solar panel might be needed. But typically, if the 30-watt doesn't cover you, then the 60-watt will. So one of the benefits we talked about being a 3rd generation side-fire radar is its ease of deployment. And this is really one of the things that sold me on the benefits to the SpeedLane Pro. So my background is in traffic control. I used to work for a company that manufactured and sold portable message signs and arrow boards. And so when we were in the ITS market working in smart work zones, I oftentimes had to do portable setups of side-fire radar. And I've worked with some RTMS devices. I've also worked with Wavetronic Smart Sensor HD devices. And to this day, I have probably done more installations of either of those devices than I have Houston Radar, which I've only been to Houston Radar about a year now. Plus, it's been a crazy year that I've been here. So I am catching up on the number of installations I've done with the SpeedLane Pro. But this is really where I found the SpeedLane Pro far exceeds any competition out there. And both of those are fine devices. And I've got nothing really good things to say about how those operate, but they could be improved upon. And so we did. The video camera that's included as standard with the SpeedLane Pro is really an alignment device. It does have a DVR option, but it's mostly used for alignment and setup. And coming again from the trailer world, where it was very easy to move a trailer or have the mast slide back and forth or just have sway from wind, knowing exactly where a device is pointed was always a real trick. And it took a lot of time when deploying it to raise the mast or aim the device, then raise the mast, then wait for feedback to see if we're actually tracking anything, then lower it back down, make adjustments, raise it back up. And then if the trailer itself ever got moved because it got bumped by another vehicle or someone else thought it was too close to the road, or if it was on sliding gravel or something, all of your detection zones were completely thrown off and you had to go through the entire process again. With the There are multiple setup options. You can do it via Bluetooth, which is also standard. You can use Bluetooth on a Windows device or an Android device, Android smartphone, or again via a Windows like laptop. You can do it via wired connection, serial to USB if you're going to use a laptop, or Ethernet even if you want to connect directly to your laptop. You could also do this via existing comms. If you're wired into a backbone that exists there already, or even through a cell phone modem. So you can do this remotely. By looking through at this video camera, whether it's a streaming video or a snapshot, you'll get an idea by looking at these red crossers exactly where the center of the detection zone is. Now, this is not the complete detection zone. This is just the center of it. So wherever this is aimed, that gives you an idea about where the rest of the detection zone is. So the device has a built-in accelerometer that tells you the level of, and gyroscope, it tells you the level of the device. Do you have it, 0 is completely level. There's usually some grace in there, 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees. And then the tilt is the angle at which you rotate the antenna. The radar devices inside the enclosure. So 83 degrees is, off of 0 down, rotated down. That's not as important as being able to define and know for certain where your detection zone is. So wherever these crosshairs are pointed, that's the center of your detection zone. It is the best tool to use in the alignment of side fire radar I've ever seen in more than 15 years of working with this type of equipment now. It just leaves no question to where your detection zone is compared with a graphic rendering that you would get from some other devices, for example. To give you guys an idea about how fast it can be deployed, this is a customer in Malaysia. This is the very first SpeedLane that they deployed. And you can tell their traffic control measures are a little bit different than what we do here in the US. But they were so impressed, they wanted us to know that from the time they began this install, and this includes a solar panel here, until the time they were getting a data feed, it was less than 30 minutes. So they rolled their crew out there, strapped this stuff to the pole, lined it up using our install wizard, and within 30 minutes, they're getting a live feed on the Tetrion cloud server, which is the cloud-based software they use. Now, again, it may take 30 minutes just to set up traffic control here in this country, but it's still an illustration of how quickly this can be done when you have access to poles that are close to the road. Last case study that we're going to take a look at is for the region of Peel near Toronto in Ontario, Canada. This is an example of an agency that was kind of tired of doing the same old. These guys had been using road tubes for many years to conduct 7-day counts every year. And that was really the only counts they were doing in this region. And in Canada, the regions, they're really counties is what we would call them down here. But they wanted a better way to do it because this area had been growing so much. It's a suburb of Toronto. And they were looking for a way to get regular data as opposed to 7-day counts sometime throughout the year. And so they were willing to consider permanent stations. And because they wanted as little impact as possible on traffic conditions and for future crews who might have to perform any kind of maintenance, they wanted a non-intrusive solution. So the SpeedLane Pro was selected out of several entrants to earn this business. And it's been nothing short of a tremendous success story for us. So what the region was doing before, like I was mentioning, they used road tubes, and every year they were going out and hammering these down on the road. with all the problems that goes with that. So that means they couldn't do it in certain types of weather. So the snow plows can't run over these things without tearing them up. They had to replace them fairly regularly. I don't know if it was exactly every year, but pretty dang near it, because those road tubes just have a lot of wear and tear from, guess what, being run over. There were recurring costs of replacing those tubes. It was dangerous for the work crews. They had to set up traffic control to stop traffic and then put the crews out there, and then the same thing to bring them back in. And what they switched to was a permanent counting station that they basically never have to maintain. This is one of the new poles that they installed in a detection zone. They use their solar panel here, and the SpeedLane Pro is mounted up here covering this detection zone. It was basically one-time installation. They don't have to do it every year. All year long, they are getting up to the minute live data feed, and they can look at historical records all the way back to however long the historical records have been taken, in this case now about 3 years. They do tie this into our Tetrion cloud server, so they have browser-based access with no additional software to install. And they have, anytime if they do have a service event, which might entail cleaning the solar panels, for example, or checking up on the alignment if there's been a heavy wind that's come through, they don't have to divert traffic. There's very little traffic control that would be involved because of the way they're able to offset these devices from the roadway. So this project had 10 test locations as kind of a proof of concept to begin with. 7 of those new poles that I just showed you were used, and 3 were put on existing infrastructure, existing poles. These guys did use a solar panel plus an external battery. Their solarity is such that they didn't want to take a chance that they might lose power. So besides, so they're using an external battery pack that just provides a larger capacity than our internal battery would, and they're also using an external cell modem. So that was part of their decisions to integrate with what they had been doing and use existing stock of inventory instead of having to buy everything all over again. And they do integrate with our Tetrion cloud server. They have, as of this year, now upgraded to 59 locations, and there are about another 100 or so still in the plan. So they're doing, right now they're on track to be doing about 100 a year for the next few years. I'm sorry, 20 a year for the next few years. Just to kind of go back to what we were looking at here on this pole. So here's the SpeedLane up here. The modem is installed in there. This is a 50-watt solar panel, which they decided to use because, again, of their lake effect they get in Toronto, and the battery and solar charger inside this device. So this is not necessarily typical of what we would do in the US, but again, for you guys up there in the Northwest, the weather conditions are such that this might be a little more akin to what covers you guys sort of across the board if there was a standard installation. This is a screenshot of their summary page for their Tetrion cloud server software, where this is a much older one, of course, since they don't have as many roads, but at least lists each location that they can access very quickly if they want an individual records, or they can lump them all together for historical reports across the region. It is an ultra low power performance with the modem. You can see here that this is one of the reports available in Tetrion that give you the battery charge report, and this is throughout the winter here that we've recorded from early December through late January in 2017. This is showing how much the batteries are discharging and then recharging on an hourly basis. With a competing type device, you would have needed a 600-watt solar panel in order to achieve that runtime. And through the worst of the winter, we were able to do it with a 50-watt solar panel. So we're beginning to wrap things up here. I do appreciate everyone's patience and attention so far. I'm going to close this out by talking about the interface with the SpeedLane Pro and some of the options that you have. Our stats analyzer software is included as standard. There's no additional charge. The software it's a current product, so it means it's constantly in development. We have translations in Spanish, French, and Russian that are coming out very soon. I actually just got word this week or last week that the Russian one is just about done. The stats analyzer software, it's a Windows-based software, so it does need to be installed. It's available for download from our website. We also include it on a thumb drive with each device that you buy. It's a full-featured configuration and analysis software, meaning that this is a software that you can use to retrieve data from your radars, whether it's remotely or wirelessly or a wired connection. And then it gives you the ability to completely manage the data in that, what we would call a project, which is each one of these blocks down here. You can generate standard percentile speed and count reports broken down by day, week, or month. You can compare different time periods, and there's also the raw data file available from here, which is kind of the gold mine of data, which is individual vehicle records. So the SpeedLane Pro will store internally the most recent 1 million vehicle records, and that is an individual timestamp, lane assignment, measurement and length, speed for that particular device, and which direction it was traveling in. So that raw data, again, is going to be housed in the SpeedLane internally for the last 1 million vehicles. And if you're using something like our stats analyzer or the Tetrion cloud server, every time you log in and save that information, you'll have that data going back however far you might need it. So the individual vehicle records are always there. Of course, most of the time, people are primarily interested in average speeds and 85th percentile speed counts, and volumes. Those are probably the three most common. So all of those are going to be available in various formats in Stats Analyzer as well. There's really a lot that you get in Stats Analyzer. There are about 18 different report formats, plus the raw data, the power supply report you guys saw earlier, a GPS map if you're using cell phone with GPS, and you have the ability to merge data from multiple devices to paint a bigger picture, a more complete picture of an area instead of just a specific spot on a roadway. So this is a list of some of the different report formats that are available, again, for each device, and this is included with every SpeedLane Pro. There are these 9 reports for each direction, plus the raw data, and then these additional power and location reports. Another software option that we have that I've mentioned a few times now is our Tetrion Cloud Server software. The Cloud Server is a browser-based interface. So you don't have any additional software to install. We recommend Google Chrome, but it does work with the latest version of the most popular browsers that are out there nowadays. The cloud server typically is going to be hosted on the data would typically be hosted on a server that Houston Radar owns. We are powered by Amazon AWS, so it's a tier 1 secure server. There is the option to exist to host your own Tetrion server. So if the state level DOT, for example, is interested in owning and keeping all of their data without any exposure risk, then you can install Tetrion yourself and communicate on a VPN with your devices. These are some screenshots that you get in Tetrion. Again, this is what we call a summary view, just different devices that you can see. You get a quick snapshot of the last time a picture was taken with the video camera, current speeds for directions that are being monitored, average speeds, and then you can open up each individual location to run various reports that exist. So all the same reports that exist in Stats Analyzer are also going to exist in Tetrion. So you have, again, the full complement of data with the added benefit of being a little more user intuitive, I think, because people are used to navigating around the internet now. They're also used to drop-down menus and used to getting very quick reports. And so all of these you can click and drag and move around and zoom in on. I think it's a little more intuitive than Stats Analyzer. Plus, you have the huge added benefit of Tetrion being a polling software. So instead of having to manually connect to and download the device from each device one at a time using Stats Analyzer, with Tetrion, the radar will call the server and push its data. So that data is available on demand, and that can push its data at user-defined call intervals. So it could be every 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 30 minutes or 6 hours. Again, that's a user definition for how often you think you might want a live update of your data. There's also historical data available in Tetrion. We house on our server the data for up to 5 years. We may end up increasing that as we get more users, but for right now, 5 years is probably a nice round number. And you can download the data from Tetrion as well. So again, just like with Stats Analyzer, you will always have it for your own historical record. We also offer at no additional charge a Houston Radar smartphone app. That's for Android Bluetooth support. So it'll work for Bluetooth and cellular connections using Android. It does work over cellular for iOS. The iOS support for Bluetooth is prohibitively expensive to develop, so that functionality doesn't exist. So for as far as smartphones or tablets go, using Android, it's fully integrated. You can do just about everything with the app that you can do with Stats Analyzer, except for view the data. So you can take a look at the lane configuration. You can edit that. You can view live speed and counts here, as this screen sort of demonstrates. And again, the idea is that, especially if you're doing a spot check or performing some type of site maintenance, the crews might not always carry around a Windows laptop with them that they can use to connect to these devices, but they'll probably always have a smartphone with them. And if they can connect to the device using the built-in Bluetooth that again is included as standard, then that ought to save them some time and having equipment on the road, which ought to improve safety and cost measures as well. So just to recap some of the customer benefits that we think you'll enjoy using the SpeedLane Pro, it's a non-intrusive device, meaning it's going to save users the time and money, and then also the instrument legacy of working with intrusive devices. The third generation SideFire technology has improved power efficiency and level of integration, so there's fewer things that can go wrong because there's more integration, plus the top-notch performance that just didn't exist previously. There was a good reason that people shied away from non-intrusive detection devices, and that was because it did not give them the trusted data that they're used to from some of their intrusive devices like loops. And then the cloud server, again, provides for very easily visualization and some alerting features without the need to manually fetch that data. So that wraps up the formal part of the presentation. Again, I appreciate everyone's time and interest. I'd be very happy to address any questions or concerns or thoughts, feedback that anyone has. So I'd like to turn it back over to Ryan now, and let's see if we can address any of those.
Thank you, Casey. That was a great presentation. Really appreciate it. So are there any questions? Please unmute and fire away.
Hey, Casey, I had a question. I think I might have missed it, but I had a question on, so when you're in the stats analyzer, can all the data be pulled out like into a CSV file and shared with like local agencies, homeowners associations, and so on to kind of verify, quote, speed studies that don't have loops on the roadway?
Absolutely, and you didn't miss that. I failed to mention it. So in Stats Analyzer, there is a full suite of export features. We offer exporting in 16 different formats. CSV is one of the more popular ones. Excel format is another popular one. So any of the data that you view in Stats Analyzer, whether it is a chart or a table, whether you're filtering by hours, days, weeks, or months, you can export that into kind of the format of your choice for sharing. I would say typically an agency doesn't have that many different users interfacing with Stats Analyzer, because what they want are those users to then generate the types of reports or visual aids that the other departments may need. So if you have someone who's focused on volumes, for example, they would use Stats Analyzer to run the reports for whatever filters or sorting might need to be done that's been requested, and then they present that in Excel or PDF format to the people who actually use that data or have the need of viewing that in some format or another. That's a good question. Yeah, I should have mentioned that.
Perfect. And the other thing I was thinking about, so if somebody gets the PoE option of the SpeedLane Pro, they're allowed to get live feed. They can get live feeds from the camera that's built in into the SpeedLane Pro, correct?
That's right. So
record if needed.
Yes. So with the video camera that is included as standard, to access the streaming capabilities of that, you really need a connection over either an Ethernet connection or cellular connection. And so if a user has the PoE module, then they have the optionality of doing communications and power over that Ethernet connection, using an RJ45. So the ability to record would come from the DVR option. But if they just wanted to sit there and watch the cars go by, they can do that over Ethernet or cellular. Yeah, and so if they had the PoE module, that includes the Ethernet connectivity.
Perfect. Those are my questions.
Very good.
All right. Well, everyone. And like I said, I hope to see you on future Coffee with Coral sessions. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.